Thank you everyone for joining us. This is the CANIE Europe session, which is the final session of this year's Climate Action Week. You're all very welcome. The European chapter members are here. Some of the leadership team members are here with us today. I'm Caroline Mangan. I'm the secretary of the CANIE Europe chapter. And we have Maywish Kirrane, who's been coordinating Climate Action Week on the call as well. And my co-facilitator, Philippa Cahill, for today's session is here with us as well, along with other colleagues, Margarita, Fiona, Noreen, and Marianne. So you're all very welcome. We have about an hour for today's session. For those who are new to CANIE, you can see some of the links, the social media links on screen there. And no doubt you will be receiving further follow-up emails after today's session. So I'm going to kick off. So today's event and all of CANIE's Climate Action Week is kindly sponsored by Alethea, which is a worker cooperative providing consulting services to decarbonise international education by focusing on equity-centred climate action. So you can see there on the slide, some of the services include operations, assessments, professional development training, policy writing support, messaging and communications. And I believe we have Sarah Mines from Alethea on the call today. So thank you, Sarah, for joining us. And Alethea are a proud signatory of the CANIE Accord. So if you haven't heard about the CANIE Accord, definitely check out the CANIE website for further information, particularly if your institution is not already a signatory and may be interested in finding out more. So today's session, as I mentioned, we have about an hour. Just briefly to touch on the CANIE terms of reference, in terms of a little bit of background about what CANIE has been involved in. You will be able to have a look and see who our current members are through our Padlet. Philippa will share that shortly. We will acknowledge some of our recent successes as a chapter as well. We will have a presentation from Dr. Maria Kirrane, the Sustainability Officer at the University College Cork here in Ireland, followed by a Q&A. We'll have 4 breakout rooms, which will cover topics of greening conferences and the Travel with CANIE initiative, Climate Justice Working Group, the CANIE Marketing and Communications Working Group, and an introduction to some climate action resources. We will hopefully take an all-group photo as well at some point during the session, and we will regroup to just discuss some next steps. So over to Philippa.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Caroline. So as Caroline mentioned, I'm co-hosting the meeting today. I'm a volunteer and a member of the European chapter. I'm based in Germany. I'm a study abroad advisor at LMU Munich. And yeah, that's a dynamic that I really enjoy in this chapter, is that anybody can volunteer to facilitate a meeting. So I'm really delighted to do that today at such an important one during Climate Action Week. Here's a little bit about CANIE if you're new to the network. CANIE was founded in late 2019, so still a relatively new network, and held their first event already in May 2020. It's an entirely volunteer-run network led by a global board. And there are 3 regional chapters to this one, the European chapter, and then also a chapter in Oceania and the Americas chapter as well. And then in addition to that, there are some global working groups that run across the different regional chapters. And you'll have the chance, as Caroline just mentioned, to learn a little bit more about that in the second half of the meeting today. So marketing, fundraising, climate justice, the podcast. Yeah, so there's lots going on in the CANIE network. There are over 750 practitioners as a part of this network, practitioners from over 750 institutions as part of this network. And we strive, our vision is to strive for a carbon neutral and climate literate international education sector by 2030. And our mission is to lead and support international educators around the world to take bold climate action by providing open access to information to raise the collective ambition of the sector. So we're really delighted to have you with us today and to take part in that mission and hopefully join us. So we have this Padlet where you can, and I think we're going to share the link as well in the chat, so you can learn a little bit about all of the different people involved in our chapter, the European chapter. Yes, have a look, click on the link, and you'll see that there's a variety of different profiles involved. It's really open to anybody who's interested in the topic of climate action in our sector. and we have had some success in our chapter. So I'm going to hand over to Margarita to tell you a little bit more about a recent success story.
Yes, certainly. We had a very full year of like great events and great things that happened. So first of all, as a chapter, we want to acknowledge our colleague and former secretary, Monica Perez-Bedmar, for receiving the Peter Wolitzer Advocacy Award at the Forum Education Awards a month ago in Seattle. So she had the stage for herself for like 20-25 minutes, and she like took the time to mention CANIE and how much sustainability is important to her, to our group, and to international education. So congrats, Monica, I know you're online. And I don't know if you like and like this public recognition, but we want to acknowledge how important this, award is for you and for us as well as a group. So go, Monica. And also last September in Barcelona for EAIE, CANIE was awarded the President Award 2022. So this is the ceremony where we were invited to, and it was a very great moment, a lot of recognition for CANIE. And so CANIE was mentioned many times during the conference. And so people start kind of recognizing us, which is great. Awareness is key. And that happened as well in Seattle last March. It was a lot of like talking about sustainability, about who we are. And so that's great. So keep up with the great work, guys. Yay.
Perfect. Thank you, Margarita. So we're going to kick off the activities for today with our guest speaker, who, yes, is going to have control of the slides as well. And while she's doing that, I will tell you a little bit of information about Maria Kirrane. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, Maria, who is our guest speaker today. She's Sustainability Officer at University College Cork in Ireland. Maria holds a BSc in Environmental Science from UCC and a PhD in Ecology, which she undertook between UCC and the US Department of Agriculture in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And then at University College Cork, Maria is tasked with delivering the university's sustainability strategy, which seeks to embed the SDGs across all functions of the university. She led the university in becoming the first in the world to be awarded a green flag from the Foundation for Environmental Education. And she established at UCC a Green Campus Living Laboratory program, supporting staff and students to develop their own sustainability projects. So some fantastic work. We're delighted to have you here, Maria, and I'll hand over to you.
Thank you. Thanks for the introduction. Thanks everyone for having me. So I know I was originally invited to talk about what we're doing in UCC on carbon neutral academic travel, and all I can say is I wish I'd cracked that nut. We haven't, and I'm really interested in this group and what you're doing. What I'm going to do is give a kind of overview of our overall sustainability program, some of our really more successful elements of that. I'll try and bring in a little bit of the international dimension as well, and hopefully some of what I say might spark some ideas for you all. So if I can move forward on my slides. Yes. So I suppose just to say, we've been at this a while in UCC. So I suppose you could go back to 2000 when our Environmental Research Institute was established. That's our flagship institute for sustainability now. It was back in 2007 then that our students kind of raised concerns about environmental management on campus. They had come from schools where they were engaged with the Green Flag programme in schools. I think across Europe it's called EcoFlag. It's run by the Foundation for Environmental Education. And they wanted to be involved in environmental management on campus. So they set about establishing a Green Campus pilot programme. And in 2010, then we were the first university in the world to be awarded a Green Campus. I won't go through this whole slide in detail, but just to kind of highlight a few milestones, I guess. In 2017, then the role of Sustainability Officer was created. That was the first time that there was someone tasked with managing sustainability full-time on campus. And then in 2022, last year, we established our Office of Sustainability and Climate Action, and that's within the President's Office in UCC. So I suppose I'll just go through some of the highlights. So like I said, we were the first Green Flag campus. We were also the first university to be certified to ISO 50001, which is for energy management. Again, I won't go through all of these. We're 8th in the UI Green Metric ranking. We're the EAUC, that's the UK and Ireland Group Sustainability Institution of the Year last year. And we were the first university outside of North America to get the STARS Gold accreditation. I'll talk about that in a minute. Also the first university to have our own farm to fork program, and first plastic free cafe as well. So I mentioned STARS there. So STARS is it's a rating system for sustainability in universities, and it is independently regarded as being the most comprehensive assessment of sustainability in higher education. It's transparent and it covers everything that we do. So back in 2018, we decided that we were going to submit to this rating system. And as I mentioned, we were the first university outside of North America to get a gold rating. Platinum is available, so we're working towards that. So then in 2022, we did, so you submit to STARS every 3 years. So we did it again in 2022. And this is just to illustrate the breadth of sustainability. So if you can read, hopefully you can read, I know the writing's quite small, it covers everything that we do. So curriculum, research, engagement, obviously our environmental impacts then on air and climate, our buildings, our energy, food, our grounds, our procurement practices, our transport, our waste, our water, how are we coordinating our sustainability program. Then it also goes into things like diversity and affordability, our investments, how sustainable are they, our well-being at work, so how are we treating our employees and our students. So it really takes the broad focus on sustainability. So we've kind of used that as much as a rating as a gap analysis as well to improve on what we're doing. So you can see then that in the 4 intervening years, we did actually make significant improvements. And I guess a lot of what I'll talk about in the next few slides will show you how we manage that. So this year we've launched our Sustainability and Climate Action Plan, and that's kind of building on the success of our sustainability strategy, which was launched in 2016. Both the strategy and now the action plan cover, again, the broad focus on sustainability. So all of our operational impacts, but also our teaching and learning, our research, our engagement. Within that plan, we have kind of high level commitments to be net zero by 2040. And that it doesn't sound like the most ambitious commitment, but we're looking at all scopes of our emissions. So scope 1, scope 2 and scope 3. And also to be a zero waste campus by 2030. So we're currently looking at the certifications, the European certifications around that. This action plan sits under our overall university strategy, which again was launched this year as well. It's called Securing Our Future, and it places a very significant emphasis on sustainability. So you can see the goals there on the right. Goal 5 is our place, our footprint, and basically all around our sustainability program. You can see actually goal 3 is global engagement, and obviously there's contradictions there. How are we going to engage more globally while still reducing our carbon footprint? But it's looking at things like internationalization in the curriculum as much as sending people abroad, and doing what we do in a more efficient way, I suppose. So then we also have nationally, we are required to submit a climate action roadmap to government. That's a mandate, and we've just done that this month. So we have public sector commitments in Ireland. I mean, all European countries will have the same kind of commitments. Our public sector has to lead by example in terms of reducing carbon footprints. So we have to reduce our scope 1 and 2 emissions by 51% by 2030. And that's absolute emissions. So up to now, in these kind of government targets, we were talking about improving efficiency. Now we're talking about, regardless of how much you grow in terms of students or your estate, you need to reduce your emissions by 51%. So this is actually quite an ambitious target, and it's great. It's brilliant that the government are pushing us. Now, hopefully they'll fund it as well. But we have been successful in getting some pathfinders. So the government developed this pathfinder funding program then for demonstration projects on campuses. And the approach, like I said, it's scope 1 and 2 emissions. So the approach is on our buildings, retrofitting our buildings and improving on-site energy generation. We are now required, another new thing that happened this year with this new plan is that we are required to report on our staff travel, and this is again the first time that this has been a national requirement. So there aren't now any kind of targets in regards to staff travel, but we are required to report on it, and we are expecting that there will be targets coming down the line. So we are looking at establishing some kind of carbon budget process for departments, for schools, to equitably distribute the amount of travel that we will be able to do. And then we have to be realistic here. If we're going to continue to travel, if we're going to continue to emit Scope 3 carbon, we are going to have to identify an equitable offsetting solution. So some universities have already started to purchase offsets. Some research funding agencies are requiring you to purchase offsets. We haven't done that yet because, as far as we're concerned, there isn't currently a reliable, credible carbon offsetting option. So I mentioned that Pathfinder. So this is our gap to target, it's called. So again, this is focused on buildings, so I won't dwell on it, but it's just an example of some of the work we're doing in terms of our Scope 1 and 2 emissions. So this was one of the Pathfinder projects where we upgraded our building to an air source heat pump, reducing the carbon emissions of that building by 40%. But this is our overall carbon footprint. I've been mentioning scopes, and I am assuming that people understand what scopes are. Scope 1 is our heating effectively, and Scope 2 is our electricity, and then our Scope 3 is everything else. So what you can see from this diagram, and I know it's a little bit out of date, but the breakdown in general is the same. Our Scope 3 emissions make up about 2/3 of our overall carbon footprint, and this is similar across the sector. This isn't unique to UCC. What you can see is that actually, you know, business travel, it's significant. Staff and student travel in total is about 14–15% of our carbon footprint. So it is significant, but it was surprising to us actually that student commuting was the same, 15%. And that is something that's quite, I won't say unique to UCC, but maybe unique to some of the Irish institutions where we have a major shortage of student accommodation, which means that our students have to drive to and from campus. So one of the kind of behavioural change programs that we implemented, which has been really successful, is our Saver Save scheme. So this was part of, I mentioned our ISO 50001 accreditation, and the Saver Save scheme is part of that. So we have over 100 buildings on campus, and 13 of those buildings use over 80% of our electricity and heating. They're incredibly intense science buildings, our library, those kinds of buildings. So what we did was we set up teams within those buildings, and we said to them, look, this is how much money you typically spend on your energy budget per year. If you make savings in your energy consumption, we will give you those financial savings to then spend on other environmental projects. So it was a revolving fund mechanism, basically, where we set up these teams. We kind of gave them the decision-making power. We supported them by telling them what kind of projects they could implement, but it was up to the teams themselves to decide the projects and implement them. And then the financial savings from that stayed with them. So they were able to then decide what else they would do with that money. And what we found was that kind of devolving that power in decision-making was incredibly impactful. So just one of the case studies of that was our library building. So that our library building is one of the biggest buildings on campus. It's one that all of our students are likely to visit at some point in their studying life, you'd hope. So what did we do there? And I always say, you know, it's not rocket science. We were trying to reduce electricity consumption, so we switched off the lights. We basically looked at the occupancy of the building at different times of year, and when there was low occupancy, we divided the building into the areas that were quite intense in terms of their energy, less intense. We moved students from the more intense areas into the less energy intensive areas and switched off the lights. Then with so the library then was able to make the decisions, the team there, on what they wanted to do with the financial savings. So they really wanted to work on waste reduction. This was back in 2017, before a lot of the plastic-free initiatives had started, and they decided that they were done with disposables. So they were just going to put this big sign at the entrance to the building saying no more disposables. You can bring your coffee in, but only in reusable. Then we worked with them to correct the infrastructure in terms of recycling. So we got rid of all bins. We went totally binless in the building, except for these bin stations at the entrance and exit. So students and staff were expected to take their rubbish with them when they were leaving the building, and dispose of it correctly on their way out. We ran, really kind of good targeted marketing campaigns to feed back to building users. We linked it in with wellbeing. So another thing they decided to do with their funds was put a green wall into the 24-hour reading room. So this room where students would be at maybe 5 o'clock in the morning studying for an exam the next day. They put a living green wall in there to kind of make the experience a little bit more enjoyable for them, and celebrating a success with the team. So that was kind of the process there in the library. And what we found then was that, success breeds success. So all of a sudden the library were running this really, really great green campaign, and we were getting phone calls from across the university saying, we want to do what the library are doing. So again, that sense of ownership over sustainability really kind of drove engagement. And I guess the important thing in this as well is that our ethos all the time is progress, not perfection. So we just want people to do better. We're not saying that we're a perfectly green, sustainable university, but we're making improvements all the time. So we now have those kinds of teams across the university that are working on their own projects. So we have I suppose within that scheme, we have our red lines where you must reduce your energy consumption, you must go totally binless, but then you can use the funding to invest in different kinds of sustainable projects that might be relevant to your particular area. Another thing that has been very successful for us is bringing sustainability into our procurement processes. So it's one of 6 principles for any of our procurement strategy. It's included in all our technical specifications and selection and award criteria. What happens then is that the university works with our contractors to implement projects. And so that's been the key, I suppose, to some of our bigger impact projects. So for example, our catering contract, there was a significant amount of points awarded for sustainability within that contract. And that means that we have a very strong relationship with our caterers. There's a restaurant committee that overviews the implementation of that contract. It meets every 2 months. Sustainability is a standing item. The CEO of the company comes to those meetings, and we're constantly talking about what's happening next with sustainability. So that's how we've been able to implement our Farm to Fork program. This year we went totally plastic and disposable. Well, we got rid of all plastic bottles and all disposable cups. So even compostable, there are no disposable cups now available across UCC. And we were able to do that because of this. The procurement process. We have cleaning contractor that uses waterless chemical-free cleaning. We have a printing contractor that works on a service model and supplies only refurbished printers to the university. And again, they're a local company as well. Because we were bringing sustainability into our process, it has meant that we're able to use more local companies. So this is, I just mentioned our plastic-free. So we went completely single-use plastic-free across our catering operations in January. In terms of bringing sustainability into the curriculum, we have an academic strategy that was launched in 2018, and it's based on the connected curriculum, and sustainability is one of the 6 themes within that connected curriculum. We've had a university-wide module in sustainability, which is open to staff, students, and the general public. That's been happening since 2016. A lot of international students take that module. Actually, it's really popular. We also developed back in 2020 an open source SDG teaching toolkit. So that's for our staff. It's basically an online, it started off as an Excel sheet. It's now a little bit more we got programmers to make it look more fancy, but it's basically a way for teaching staff to to self-assess their modules and their programs against each of the 17 SDGs, using a kind of 5-point scale that we've developed from our connected curriculum. And within that toolkit, then there's also a resource library. So if a staff member decides that they think they could be covering more sustainability, there's resources there that they can just plug into their teaching. And we then, from that, developed a digital badge course as well for all of our teaching staff, called Learning and Teaching with the SDGs. And that's all around like peer learning. So we've focused on some academic staff within the university that are doing some really interesting things in terms of bringing sustainability into their teaching. And I guess the overall aim is that it's not necessarily that we would have more sustainability courses, but that regardless of the course that you do in UCC, you would graduate with some level of sustainability knowledge. So, for example, we have an academic that teaches modern Irish, and she takes her students to our community garden to do a class there. So, you know, just kind of thinking outside the box a little bit and looking at how we can bring sustainability into all of our teaching. We also have a Sustainable Futures programme, which was funded by the government's Human Capital Initiative, and that's sustainability and enterprise. So it's working with enterprise partners to develop courses that they have identified as meeting skills gaps within their sector. We also last year, I know you mentioned carbon literacy there in your introduction, we developed a carbon literacy training programme. This was with the Carbon Literacy Project in the UK. We took their toolkit and we adapted it with our own UCC expertise. And we launched that back in October. It's a mix of online and in-person content. There's a digital badge, and anyone that takes it also gets carbon literacy certification, covering all the basics of climate justice, and then looking at carbon footprints, mitigation and adaptation. And the whole idea of climate literacy is that at the end, you're taking action. So you're developing an action plan based on your learnings for your specific area. So it's open to students and staff. So if you have someone from the finance office taking this, they will go back and decide, okay, how can I bring sustainability into my work in the finance office? And we're now looking at how we can develop this for our senior leaders as well. So really looking at how their decision making can contribute to our sustainability goals. Our Living Lab program was mentioned. This is a kind of a fund that we open up for staff and students to apply to for either master's projects or demonstration projects that address some of the goals within our sustainability strategy. So we've had 2 calls for this. We'll have a 3rd one coming up soon. And some of the successful projects, I suppose, we had on the top right-hand corner there, we had our open arboretum. So we're now certified as an arboretum. We've over 2,000 trees on UCC campus, and this group takes students, local schools, on tours of our arboretum and kind of talking to them about the importance of trees. Down in the bottom left-hand corner, our international office actually set up a swap shop with their funding from the Living Lab. So as you know, international students come for a short amount of time. They come in, they buy lots of new things, they leave, and a lot of their stuff is left behind as well. So they set up this swap shop where when the students are leaving, they would drop off any good usable items to the international office, and then it opens up as students come back, and that's been incredibly successful. Just a little bit, we did a big project on mapping our research last year. So we did workshops, 32 workshops with our researchers across all of the schools and every single school in the university to map all of their research against the SDGs, and to kind of help our researchers understand how their work can contribute to the SDGs as well. A new project that we have at the moment is looking at engaging students with our green space on campus. So obviously there's a push to get students back on campus post-pandemic and get them more engaged, because they had a few years of being really, really isolated. And so we've taken that and we're trying to really engage them with the green space on campus, because we have a lot of beautiful areas. Really, we've a really beautiful literally green campus. We have a community garden. I mentioned our arboretum. We have lovely wildflower meadows. And it's a research element to that as well, then, to see how does that engagement with the outdoors with nature impact on their further engagement with other sustainability and climate action projects. So that project just started in January, actually. We also recently became co-hosts of an Irish SDSN All-Ireland Sustainable Development Solutions Network. So we're co-hosts at Queen's University Belfast. Again, we've just established that. We launched in February. And the aim there is to engage with universities, local authorities, NGOs to really work on action projects that are delivering on the SDGs. So SDSN, you're probably aware that it's an international network that was established by the UN to kind of for universities to be kind of have oversight in some ways of some of the activities that are happening on the ground in SDG implementation. So we'll be hoping to kind of engage internationally on that as well with other SDSN networks. So just in terms of some of the success that we've had and what has contributed to it, what we found is that really it all started out with students and that kind of bottom up drive from them. Then eventually the university copped on and got involved and you know, things like our sustainability strategy and our now our university strategy, that top-down push came. And what happened then was that you had this kind of flourishing of ideas and projects with the green teams, the university-wide module, and this kind of ecosystem, I suppose, has evolved within the university for sustainability, and it really has been a cultural change. I'm happy to answer questions, and I'm sorry I haven't gone too much into international, but I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone has.
Wow, thank you so much, Maria. That was so insightful. I think a lot of really impressive content there. And I can see just some of the reactions in the chat and some of the questions there are already indicating just how impressed people are. I think quite envious as well, which is always good to see. So I'm going to just open out for questions. I'm going to go to the questions in the chat first. And if that prompts other questions, feel free to put them in the chat or hold them and you can unmute afterwards. So Stephen, you have a question there about carbon footprint calculations. Do you want to go into that? And Maria, you might be able to respond.
Sure, thanks. Hello, Maria. Fantastic presentation. Looks like there's some great work going on in Cork. Just wondering, is there a standardized platform for the Irish institutions to do those calculations, or are you using something like STARS?
There is not currently a standardized platform. There is for Scope 1 and 2, because the SBAI, Sustainable Energy Authority of Ireland, kind of manage that. But for Scope 3, no, there isn't. So we would use the global, I'm trying to remember the name, global reporting protocol, I think it is. I can't believe I can't remember the name of that, but GHG protocol, I think, which is the global methodology for assessing your carbon footprint. So in the past, our last really significant carbon footprint, where we went into a lot of detail on Scope 3, we had a researcher work on that with us. And we've done that a few times actually with, we have a kind of an in-house research consultancy group that do that. And we're kind of trying now to get a better data management system in place for all of our sustainability data, so that we'll be faster in doing it from now on. But to answer your question, no, there isn't a standard in Ireland for that calculation. It is something that we need, probably.
Okay, and thanks so much, Maria. And Noreen has asked about, is there a green procurement list for public institutions, or is green procurement compulsory in public tenders now?
Yes, it is, but it's just not being used, which the mind boggles. I saw a news article the other day saying that I think it was some really low, maybe 10% of government contracts were awarded with green procurement criteria in the last year, in spite of the fact that there is a kind of, well, compulsory is probably too strong a word. I think, you know, there's these circulars around green procurement. But yes, it is recommended at least. And there's a whole, the EPA, I think, just developed a toolkit for public sector, which does, it only came out in the last 6 months. But that has been incredibly helpful. It basically gives you the criteria, because the problem with procurement, and it's similar for a lot of sustainability, is that procurement is quite complicated, and I'm a sustainability manager. I don't really know the procurement process. Our procurement manager doesn't really know sustainability. So we've managed over the last 5 or 6 years by getting together and trying to figure it out together. But this new EPA toolkit actually, I think, just gives you what you need to know. It's which is what was needed for a long time.
Okay, thank you. And B has asked about the open source SDG project. If you can
that's on our website. I can put a link in the chat. Actually, I'll just find it.
Fantastic. I think everyone is asking then, would it be okay to share your slides directly with people on the call afterwards? Yeah, great. And I just have a question about the intersection with international education. You mentioned there about global engagement being part of one of the strategic goals under the Climate Action Plan. What would you say are the challenges of incorporating global engagement in that whole institution approach, and how are you trying to overcome some of those challenges to make sure that the international elements of the education experience are brought into that whole institution approach rather than them being parallel initiatives?
Yeah. I mean, the first thing to say is that we get great engagement from our international students when it comes to our Green Campus program. It's amazing. We would always have some of the most engaged students. I think they come in and they want to get involved in something, and they see Green Campus as being quite active. So they come to that. I mean, the main difficulty really is the carbon footprint associated with it. And like I said, I think I've made it quite clear a few times that we're not looking at we're never going to not emit carbon. So we need to look at how are we doing that in the most efficient way. So one of the things that the university is doing is trying to have a list, I suppose, of international universities that are our preferred engagement partners, I guess, so that we have some kind of process for how we undertake that international travel, or some kind of it's not just everyone flying off to all over the world. It is more of a, okay, we work with these universities in these countries. Then the other side of it is, who gets to travel, who needs to travel more? And that's where we need to work on these carbon budgets. But we need, like you say, yes, we need to work with our international office. We also need to work with our equality and diversity office. So we haven't, like I said at the start, we haven't cracked the nut, because it really needs to be done right. So we need to have everyone on board. So we've just launched that Sustainability and Climate Action Plan. Actually, we haven't launched it yet. What am I talking about? It's on our website, I think, but we're launching it in June. So that's the stage that we're at now. So once we need to kind of, get that out there and have our community understand that this is what we're going to be doing, and then get them on board and have that in a similar way to what I mentioned with our Save or Save scheme, have them involved in the decision making so that they will come on board with it.
Okay, great. And I think actually the CANIE network and the signatories to the CANIE Accord could be really good examples of universities for connecting with who are really, who are working on this topic. I'm just conscious of time, and we have allocated some time for breakout rooms as well. So just to open the floor, if there are any final questions for Maria that people haven't had a chance to put in the chat or have come up as we've been talking. Okay, so we have 4 breakout rooms, and I suppose there are different topics, but also the breakout rooms gives you a chance to chat with other members and unpack some of maybe what Maria has shared. So we have allocated 15 minutes.
Yes.
Okay, so you can select one of those and pop in and start networking and sharing. We have 2 minutes just to recap and to highlight some of the next steps. So I just want to highlight the CANIE podcast, the Climate Dialogues podcast. Antonio, I know you're on the call and you're involved with that working group as well. Kelly Davis has sent me some information to highlight to you. So if you're interested in being involved in a podcast working group or learning some new skills, connecting with people who are interested in this topic, there is a working group. The next meeting is on Tuesday, the 2nd of May. And some of the roles that we're currently looking for is podcast content researcher, speakers, guest sources, hosts, fundraisers, and the agenda for the meeting on the 2nd of May is to discuss the overall game plan for producing podcast episodes, to point volunteers to resources, and to brainstorm some ideas. So if you're interested in that, Kelly Davis is the contact point, and we'll pop her email address in the chat as well. So Philippa, some other next steps and points of action.
Yes, thank you. And I just wanted to mention briefly as well that if you're interested in the podcast, I'll do a quick plug as well for marketing and communications, because I know that there might be some people who were involved in the other breakout rooms who would still be interested in joining us and helping out a little bit with that. It's something that I'm personally involved in, and it's one of the first things that helped me get a little bit more involved in CANIE. It can be just a really small role. Like, for example, I'm a content researcher, so I reach out to some of our accord signatories. So if anybody's interested in kind of just a little small contribution that you can do, it doesn't have to be a lot of your week. And that's something, for example, that I do, let me know. You can contact myself, and I can pop my email address in the chat as well. Yes, so that was a little plug for marketing and communications. And then just in general, we'd love to have you as members of the European chapter. And I think, do we have a slide on that where there's the link to the information as to where you can join us? So you can join CANIE as an individual. You will, there we go. So if you go onto our website, canie.org, there's a section to join the network, where you will give us just a little bit of information about yourself, and then you'll automatically be added to whatever geographical chapter fits for you. And then you'll receive information about the upcoming chapter meetings. We meet once a month. This meeting during Climate Action Week actually fitted perfectly to the monthly meeting we would have been having anyway. So we meet again in 4 weeks' time on the 19th, the 19th of May at 10:30. And yes, so if you want to be involved in that, then don't hesitate to go onto our website and join. And thank you for joining us today. We'd love to see you at the next meeting.